There is a moment that almost nobody sees, no applause, no spotlight, no celebration, just a quiet morning when the alarm goes off. You open your eyes. Your dreams are still alive. Your goals are still written in a notebook. Your future is still possible. But then a decision is made. Not a dramatic decision. Not a decision that makes headlines. Just 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes become 30. 30 become another ordinary day. Another ordinary day becomes another ordinary month. And before you know it, years have disappeared. Let me tell you something. Most people don't lose their future because they make one terrible decision. They lose it because they make thousands of comfortable decisions. And comfort has destroyed more dreams than failure ever could. Think about this for a moment. Imagine 2 people standing at the starting line of life. They have the same education, the same opportunities, the same amount of time, the same 24 hours. One becomes extraordinary. The other spends years asking, why not me? What happened? Did one have more talent? Maybe. Did one have more luck? Perhaps. But here's what most people don't understand. Talent may open the first door. Luck may create one opportunity. But discipline keeps every door open. Without discipline, opportunity becomes wasted potential. Without discipline, talent becomes entertainment. Without discipline, intelligence becomes useless information. Without discipline, there are no results. Not because life is unfair, because results have always respected consistency more than intensity. I learned something years ago while watching an old gardener. He wasn't famous. He wasn't wealthy. Nobody interviewed him. Every single morning before sunrise, he walked into the same garden, carrying the same tools, day after day, week after week, month after month. One morning I finally asked him, "Don't you get tired of doing the same thing?" He smiled without stopping his work. Then he said something I have never forgotten. He looked at the tiny plants and quietly said, "The tree doesn't get tired of growing. Why should I get tired of helping it?" That sentence stayed with me. Because discipline isn't punishment. Discipline is cooperation with the future. Every disciplined action says, I believe in someone I haven't become yet. Most people are waiting to feel motivated. Disciplined people decide first. Motivation visits. Discipline stays. Motivation says, I'll work when I feel ready. Discipline whispers, I'll work until I become ready. And those 2 voices create completely different lives. Hey, have you ever noticed something strange? Nobody has to teach a child how to avoid difficult things. Nobody has to explain procrastination. Nobody has to train excuses. Those things arrive naturally. Growth is learned. Character is built. Discipline is chosen every single day, again and again and again. People often ask, why is success so difficult? Maybe that's the wrong question. Perhaps the better question is, why do we expect meaningful things to be easy? Look at nature. The strongest trees survive storms. Diamonds are formed under pressure. Muscles grow through resistance. Character grows through responsibility. Everything valuable demands something from you before it gives something to you. That's the law. Not because life is cruel. Because value requires preparation. Imagine someone hands you the keys to $1 million company tomorrow morning. Would you be ready? Maybe financially, maybe emotionally, maybe not. Because success isn't only about receiving opportunities. It's about becoming the kind of person who can carry opportunities without collapsing under their weight. Here's what most people don't understand. The greatest reward of discipline isn't money. It isn't influence. It isn't recognition. The greatest reward is becoming someone you trust. Think about that. Imagine making yourself a promise. I'll wake up at 6. Tomorrow comes. You hit snooze. Another promise broken. I'll start exercising. Tomorrow arrives. Another excuse. I'll stop wasting time. Hours disappear. Every broken promise sends a message to your subconscious. I cannot trust myself. Now imagine the opposite. You say you'll read 10 pages. You read 10. You promise yourself one workout. You complete it. You decide to save a little money. You save it. Little by little, something beautiful happens. Self-respect begins to grow. Confidence isn't built by compliments. Confidence is built by evidence. Evidence that you keep your word, especially when nobody is watching. Let me tell you a story. There was a young man who desperately wanted success. He admired successful people, watched interviews, read books, listened to podcasts, filled notebooks with ideas. But every evening, nothing changed. Months passed. One day, he met an older craftsman repairing watches. The young man asked, "How did you become so skilled?" The old man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he handed him a broken watch, tiny gears, tiny screws, tiny springs. The young man became frustrated. "This is impossible." The old man smiled. "No! This is uncomfortable. There's a difference. And that difference changes everything." How often have you confused discomfort with impossibility? Learning a skill feels uncomfortable. Saving money feels uncomfortable. Waking up early feels uncomfortable. Having difficult conversations feels uncomfortable. Being patient feels uncomfortable. But uncomfortable doesn't mean impossible. It simply means you're growing beyond your previous identity. Think about a butterfly. Everyone admires the wings. Almost nobody appreciates the struggle inside the cocoon. If someone cuts the cocoon to make life easier, the butterfly never develops the strength to fly. Sometimes the struggle isn't delaying your destiny, it's creating it. Here's another truth. Discipline doesn't begin in the gym, it begins in the mind. Long before your hands take action, your thoughts have already voted. Every action has a conversation before it has a consequence. One voice says, "Skip today." Another voice answers, "One day becomes 1 week." One voice says, "You deserve rest." Another replies, "You've been resting from your dreams for years." One voice whispers, "Nobody will notice." Another quietly reminds you, "You will." And isn't that the person who matters most? The mirror never lies. Your bank account may lie for a season. Social media may lie forever. Other people may misunderstand you, but your reflection knows. It knows whether you earned your confidence or borrowed it. It knows whether your peace comes from progress or from pretending. I once met a woman who transformed her life without announcing anything. She wasn't an athlete. She wasn't wealthy. She wasn't famous. She simply made one decision. Every morning, before touching her phone, she would sit quietly for 20 minutes. She would write what kind of person she wanted to become, not what she wanted to own, who she wanted to become. Reliable, healthy, generous, focused. For months, nothing dramatic happened. No miracle, no overnight success, but something invisible was happening. Her identity was changing. Because discipline always works underground before it appears above ground, a seed spends a long time invisible. Nobody applauds invisible progress, yet invisible progress creates visible transformation. Most people quit because they judge their future by today's harvest. Farmers don't think that way. They understand seasons. Planting season doesn't look successful. Watering season doesn't look successful. Waiting season doesn't look successful. Yet every one of those seasons is absolutely necessary. What season are you abandoning too early? Maybe you've planted. Maybe you've watered. Maybe you're standing 1 inch away from harvest, but you're walking away because you expected fruit before roots. Here's what I want you to consider. Life isn't testing your ability to start. Life is testing your willingness to continue. Anybody can begin a diet on Monday. Anybody can feel inspired after watching a motivational video. Anybody can make New Year's resolutions. The extraordinary people, they continue when excitement disappears, because excitement is emotional, discipline is intentional, And intentions repeated long enough become identity. There was a stonecutter who spent every day striking a massive rock. 1 strike, nothing. 10 strikes, nothing. 100 strikes, still nothing. Someone walking by might laugh. What a waste of effort. But the stonecutter understands something spectators never see. Pressure accumulates, every strike matters. Then suddenly, the rock splits. People say, what a lucky hit. No, it wasn't one hit. It was every hit. The final strike simply revealed what every previous strike had been building. Your future works exactly the same way. Nobody sees the early mornings. Nobody sees the books you finish. Nobody sees the temptations you resisted. Nobody sees the conversations you avoided because you chose growth instead of gossip. Then, one day, people call you lucky. No, they arrived late to the story. They only witnessed the breakthrough, not the becoming. Let me ask you something. What would happen if, for 1 year, you stopped negotiating with your excuses? Not fighting them, not arguing, simply refusing to let them vote. Imagine that. The excuse says, you're tired. You continue. The excuse says, you deserve tomorrow. You continue. The excuse says, this won't matter. You continue. Because every time you continue, something remarkable happens inside you. You stop identifying as someone who waits. You become someone who acts. Identity changes behavior faster than motivation ever can. Most people say, I need discipline. Maybe not. Maybe what you need is a different identity. Instead of saying, I'm trying to become disciplined, what if you quietly began saying, I am someone who finishes what I start? Notice the difference. One statement asks permission. The other declares responsibility. Your mind begins looking for evidence to support whichever identity you repeat. That's why words matter. Not because words create magic, because words direct attention. Attention influences choices. Choices shape habits. Habits build character. Character creates destiny. And destiny is rarely one giant decision. It is thousands of ordinary decisions made long before extraordinary moments arrive. I remember meeting a bus driver who had been driving the same route for over 20 years. Every passenger greeted him with respect. Children smiled when they entered. Older people trusted him. One afternoon I asked him, how did you earn so much respect doing something people often overlook? He laughed softly. Then he pointed to the steering wheel. This doesn't just move the bus, he said. It reveals the driver. He explained that every stop required attention, every turn demanded patience, every delay tested attitude. The bus wasn't his real job. The bus was his daily classroom. And every route was another opportunity to practice becoming the man he wanted to be. Think about that. What if your current job isn't just paying your bills? What if it's revealing your character? What if the task you complain about today is quietly preparing you for a responsibility you keep praying for? Because responsibilities rarely arrive before reliability. And reliability is born in the smallest moments, the way you organize your desk, the way you speak when frustrated, the way you respond when nobody says thank you, the way you finish simple tasks that no one else would notice. Successes has a strange habit. It hides inside ordinary moments disguised as routine. And most people walk right past it because they're waiting for something extraordinary to happen. But extraordinary lives are often built through remarkably ordinary days, repeated with remarkable consistency. Here's what most people don't understand. Every habit is casting a vote. Every morning routine casts a vote. Every conversation casts a vote. Every meal, every workout, every excuse. Every decision is quietly asking one question. Who are you becoming? Not tomorrow. Today, because becoming never happens all at once. It happens one decision at a time, one promise at a time, one discipline choice at a time. And the remarkable thing is that your future self is already being introduced to the world by the decisions you make today, even if you haven't met that version of yourself yet. Imagine if your future walked into this room right now, not 10 years older, stronger, calmer, more disciplined. Would that future version recognize today's habits as the path that created them? Or would they gently place a hand on your shoulder and say, there's one pattern you still haven't noticed, and once you see it, everything about the way you approach each morning begins to change because the battle was never against the alarm clock. It was never against the schedule. It was never against the workload. The real battle has always been between the person you are today and the person your future is asking you to become. Let me tell you something. There is an invisible conversation happening inside every human being. No one hears it. No one records it. But it determines almost everything. It happens when you stand in front of a difficult decision. Should I keep going? Should I quit? Should I study one more chapter? Should I save this money? Should I tell the truth, even when it costs me? Those moments seem small. They don't make the news. No one applauds them, but history, your personal history, is quietly being written. Most people think destiny arrives like lightning, suddenly, unexpectedly, completely out of nowhere. I don't believe that. I believe destiny walks slowly, potently, one disciplined decision at a time. Think about a sculptor standing in front of a giant block of marble. To everyone else, it's just a rock, heavy, cold, ordinary. But the sculptor sees something nobody else can see. A masterpiece, not because it already exists on the outside, because he can already see it on the inside. Now here's the interesting part. He doesn't create the masterpiece with one giant swing of the hammer. He creates it with thousands of careful strikes. Some are so small, they seem meaningless. A tiny chip, a little dust falls. Nothing impressive. If someone watched for only 5 minutes, they might laugh. You're getting nowhere, but return 6 months later, the stone has become art. Life works exactly the same way. Every disciplined action removes something unnecessary, one excuse, one distraction, one bad habit, one limiting belief, until eventually the person you were disappears. The person you were capable of becoming begins to appear. Here's what most people don't understand. Discipline is not adding something to your life. Very often, it is removing what has been stealing your life. Removing endless scrolling, removing meaningless comparison, removing the habit of saying yes when your priorities require a no. Removing the addiction to comfort, removing the belief that your feelings should always lead your actions. Because feelings are wonderful companions. Terrible leaders. If every farmer planted only when he felt inspired, entire villages would starve. If every pilot flew only when emotionally excited, nobody would trust an airplane. Professionals learn something amateurs rarely understand. Consistency creates freedom. People think discipline limits life. Actually, discipline expands it. Think about money. Someone who spends every dollar they earn says, I want freedom, but debt owns them. Someone else sacrifices unnecessary spending for several years. People say, you're missing out. Maybe. But later, they have choices. Freedom is almost always purchased through previous discipline. The same is true for health. The same is true for relationships. The same is true for character. You sacrifice today's impulse. Tomorrow rewards you with options. I met a violin maker once, not a famous musician. He never stood on great stages. He simply built instruments. Every violin took months, sometimes longer. He explained that he selected wood very carefully, not every piece, only the right one. Then he waited. Sometimes he allowed the wood to rest before shaping it. I asked, isn't that wasting time? He smiled. No, I'm protecting the future sound. That answer fascinated me. Imagine that protecting a sound nobody can hear yet. Isn't that what discipline really is? Protecting a future nobody else can see. Every workout protects future strength. Every book protects future wisdom. Every honest decision protects future character. Every hour of focused work protects future opportunities. People laugh because they cannot hear tomorrow's music, but disciplined people keep building the instrument anyway. Think about this for a moment. How many opportunities have you blamed on luck when they were actually built by habits? Someone becomes an excellent speaker. People call them gifted. They never saw the hundreds of evenings practicing alone. Someone becomes financially successful. People assume privilege. They never noticed years of learning, budgeting, investing, and refusing unnecessary pleasures. Someone becomes physically healthy. People admire genetics. They never witnessed thousands of ordinary meals chosen wisely. Visa success has invisible roots. Always. Here's another lesson I learned years ago. I watched an elderly woman knitting on a train. Her hands moved with incredible precision, loop after loop, thread after thread. To me, it looked repetitive. I finally asked, "Doesn't it become boring?" Without looking up, she said, "It only looks repetitive if you don't know what I'm creating." What a profound thought. Maybe your daily habits look repetitive to other people. Maybe waking up early looks repetitive. Reading looks repetitive. Saving money looks repetitive. Practicing your craft looks repetitive. But repetition is only boring when purpose is absent. Purpose transforms routine into progress. That is why two people can perform the exact same task. One feels trapped. The other feels grateful. One sees obligation. The other sees preparation. The work is identical. The perspective changes everything. Let me ask you something. What story are you telling yourself about your responsibilities? Because your story determines your energy. If you tell yourself, "I have to," your shoulders become heavy. If you quietly replace it with, "I get to prepare," everything changes. Not because the work became easier, because the meaning became greater. Meaning gives endurance. This is why parents wake up in the middle of the night for their children. This is why firefighters run toward danger while others run away. This is why great teachers continue encouraging students who don't yet believe in themselves. Purpose creates strength that comfort never could. Here's what most people don't understand. You don't become disciplined after life gets easier. Life often becomes more manageable because you've become disciplined. There's a difference. Waiting for easier circumstances is like standing beside a river, waiting for all the water to disappear before crossing. It will never happen. Challenges keep coming. Unexpected bills, unexpected criticism, unexpected disappointments, unexpected delays. Life keeps testing, not to destroy you, to reveal what has quietly been developing inside you. Imagine two buildings standing beside each other during a storm. One collapses. The other remains standing. The storm didn't create weakness. The storm exposed it. The same is true for people. Pressure doesn't invent character. Pressure introduces it. That's why some people remain calm during crisis. Not because they never experience fear, because long before the crisis arrived, they practiced discipline. Small decisions prepared them for big moments. Every ordinary day was training. Every inconvenience was rehearsal. Every setback became another opportunity to strengthen emotional muscles. People often ask, how do I become mentally strong? Start by honoring small commitments. Mental strength isn't developed only in life's biggest battles. It's developed in everyday moments. When you finish what you said you'd finish. When you tell the truth, although a lie would be easier. When you stay kind after someone has been unfair. When you continue learning after making a mistake. Those moments may appear insignificant, but they are quietly teaching your mind one extraordinary lesson. I do not surrender my values simply because my emotions changed. What incredible freedom that creates. Imagine reaching a place where your principles become stronger than your impulses, where your vision becomes louder than your excuses, where your purpose becomes greater than your temporary discomfort. That is real power, not controlling other people, controlling yourself. Because the hardest person to lead is often the one staring back from the mirror. I remember hearing about a lighthouse keeper whose responsibility was simple. Every evening, before darkness covered the ocean, he climbed hundreds of steps carrying fuel. Night after night, storm after storm. Some evenings the sea was perfectly calm. He could have skipped it. Nobody would know. Ships were still far away. The sky still looked peaceful. But he climbed anyway. Why? Because discipline prepares for problems before problems appear. The lighthouse wasn't built for sunny afternoons. It existed for stormy nights. And your habits work the same way. The book you read today may answer a question you'll face next year. The money you save today may become peace during an unexpected season. The relationship you nurture today may become strength during heartbreak. The integrity you practice today may protect your reputation when rumors begin. Discipline is always preparing you for a future conversation with life. The remarkable part is, life rarely sends you an invitation telling you when that conversation will happen. It simply arrives, quietly, unexpectedly. And in that moment, you don't rise to the level of your wishes. You respond according to the standards you've been living by all along, which is why every ordinary morning matters more than most people realize, because each morning is asking a simple question that echoes through the rest of the day. Not, what do you hope will happen? But, who will you choose to be before anything happens? And once you begin answering that question consistently, another realization begins to emerge, one that surprises almost everyone the first